Hello everyone, and welcome to this lecture on timestamps. So in this lecture, we're going to learn how to use timestamps, what there are, and keep in mind that different SQL engines, such as MySQL or Oracle, may use slightly different syntax, so you may need to refer to the online documentation if necessary, but we're going to try to show you the most basic and transferable syntax as far as extracting time information from a timestamp object. So, SQL allows us to use the timestamp data type to retain time information, as we've seen in a lot of the tables, such as date created or payments dates, that kind of thing. Later on, we're going to learn how to actually create timestamp columns when we go over creating data and creating tables. But for now, let's focus on extracting information from timestamp objects. So, the extract function allows us to extract parts from a date. And the syntax basically looks like extract and in parentheses unit from date. And we can extract many types of time-based information from a timestamp or date or time object. So here's a giant table of all the different types of units you can extract from a timestamp object. So for example, you can extract day from that timestamp and it will return the day of the month. You can also do day of the week, day of the year, millenniums, milliseconds, centuries, etc. There's a lot of information and different types of things you can extract from a timestamp object. So you can refer to the documentation for all the units, and I'll show you this link later on before we jump to pgadmin, or you can just Google search PostgreSQL datetime or PostgreSQL timestamp or MySQL datetime or whatever SQL engine you're using, plus datetime or time. So let's go ahead and see some quick examples of extract to get a better understanding of how it works. Before we hop to pgadmin, I'm going to go ahead and show you that PostgreSQL documentation page. Let's go ahead and go to it now. Okay, so here we are at the PostgreSQL documentation page. And notice if you just Google search PostgreSQLs plus datetime, etc., or date or time, most often it'll take you straight to this page as the first hit. And it'll basically just give you a list of datetime functions and operators. So we're going to focus on extract function in this lecture, but I also wanted to let you know that you can use arithmetic operators such as plus or times with datetime objects. So for example, if we scroll down here, if I wanted to use the plus operator on some dates, I could say something like this, which is date on this string, which converts it to a timestamp, plus the integer of 7 string, which converts it to the integer 7, and that will add days to your timestamp information. So this is 2001, month 9, day 28, and if I add 7 to it, it's going to return 2001, month 10, the day is 5, or the 5th. So just keep that in mind. Later on, if you find yourself needing to do these sort of operations, you can reference back to this datetime documentation. You can do the same thing with subtraction, so you can subtract time intervals or basically add time intervals to various timestamp informations. Okay, so this is pretty useful stuff in case you want to add or subtract from your current date, and you can also multiply by intervals to get larger chunks of time. This really depends on what your data looks like and what you're trying to accomplish as far as its actual use cases, so I'll let you reference the documentation when you need it. There's also datetime functions, which allow you to work and return things from a datetime object. So if we just zoom out here for a second, we can grab things such as the current date, or we can also do things such as age, which basically you pass in 2 timestamps and it'll return the interval between them, which is basically just doing the same thing as subtract. So it takes one timestamp, subtracts another timestamp, and it tells you the age or the interval between them. So for example, it would give you something like this, 43 years, 9 months, and 27 days between these 2 timestamps. Again, we're going to focus more on just using the extract statement, since we're focused right now more on reading from a SQL table versus creating timestamp information. So let's go ahead now, and you can go ahead and check out these functions on your own time through the documentation if you ever need to. But we're going to go ahead and jump to pgadmin now to show you a couple quick examples of using extract. So I'm going to go ahead and hop to pgadmin now. Okay, so here we are at pgadmin. I went ahead and selected all the columns from the payments table, so select asterisk from payment. And what we're going to be dealing with here is the payments underscore date column. So that's going to be the timestamp and no, it doesn't have the actual time zone. So we won't be able to grab time zone information from it. But let's go ahead and explore how we could use extract. So let's just start off with getting the payment date column itself. So we're going to say something like this, select, and let's just go ahead and say select payment underscore date from payments, semicolon, go ahead and run that. And here's our payment date column. And then the way we would use extract looks like this. We'll say extract, parentheses around payment date, and then we're going to have a unit from the payment date. So I can say extract day from the payment date. And the reason extract and from are in lowercase here is so that you don't get them confused that you're extracting something from a table called payment date. So here, by convention, we're using from in lowercase. So now I've been able to, if I ran that, I saw I have a list of days now. So this is quite useful, and we'll be able to use this information when we want to filter by something. So for example, I can select another column from the payment table. If we go ahead and select, so let's say customer ID column, let's go ahead and run that. And so now I have customer ID and a date part, which is that day. So we can actually say, for example, as in order to rename that. So I can say something like as day, run that again, and now I have day as that column name. Okay, so let's go ahead and see a real example of why doing extract would be useful. Let's say I wanted to figure out the total amount expenditure by the month. So how would I do that? I could say something like this. I know I have an amount column in here, so I will sum the amount column, and I'm going to extract month from the payment date, and I will say extract this as month. That way I can reference it as month later on. Then I'm going to say from payment, and since I'm doing an aggregate function of sum, I will need to group by month. Go ahead and run this, and now we see the total sum. And let's go ahead and order this by the amount. And we'll go ahead and say, well, actually order it by the sum of the amount. Run F5 here, and I can go ahead and put that in descending order. And let's go ahead and limit this to 1. And this basically answers the business task of how much did I get in payments of my highest grossing month. And that's going to be month 4. So that's January, February, March, April. So that's in April, my total amount was $28,559.46. So that's a really nice use case for using extract. So here we're saying select the total sum of the amount, extract this month from payment date as month from the payment table, go ahead and group that by that month column that we just created, order by the sum of the amount in descending order, and limit it by 1. Something that might be useful here is just to say as total for that sum amount column, and then we can say order by, instead of having to clarify by sum amount, we can go ahead and say order by total. And if we run that, you'll get the same result. Okay, so go ahead and reference the documentation for more stuff you can extract by, but what you should have just gotten out of this lecture is how to use extract and how it's useful for queries that have to do with timestamp information. Again, the syntax is just extract, parentheses, the units you want to extract, and then from, and then the column name. And by convention, we're going to say this from is lowercase, so we don't get this column name confused with a table name. Okay, with that being said, that's it for this lecture. Thanks, and I'll see you at the next one.